Hey T, what's going on? Coming back at you with another knife review. Today we're going to look at a fixed blade knife, something I don't review a ton on my channel, and I do have quite a few fixed blades. I recently did the Schrade fixed blade review, but I was looking at my collection, and I have a lot of big knives like the BK9, Ontario SP8. I have a lot of bigger choppers, batoners, those kinds of knives. But I didn't really have a medium-sized fixed blade, something that I would take into the woods with me that could kind of be a jack of all trades. If this is all I had on me, could it do the job of everything? And really, the Tops BOB stands for Brothers of Bushcraft. It's called the Fieldcraft by the Brothers of Bushcraft. So it's kind of a long name for the knife. Most people just call it the Tops BOB. And it is an exceptional fixed blade. I have watched tons of videos by like Prepared Mind 101. He's very high on this knife. Gideon's Tactical, another good channel that does a lot of outdoors type fixed blade type reviews. Sings their praises. Blade HQ, I mean, I've seen so much. I've handled the knife, I felt it, it feels amazing in the hand, and I thought, you know what, I'm just gonna drop the money and buy it, because in reality this knife is probably just, depending on what model you get, there's a few different types of handle scales. This is the gray and black G10 with the red liners, which looks awesome. Those liners really pop. They have some micarta, two other micarta versions, one with like a brown micarta, one with like a gray micarta. This one's the most expensive, but I prefer G10. So it's just a little over 115 bucks for this knife. You get, it's a really substantial, well-made knife, made over there in Idaho, just north of me, by Tops, and it's got a modified, we're going to call it a modified Scandinavian Grind, and I call it that because it does have somewhat of a convex edge on it, so, but I really like that, so it's kind of got best of both worlds in my opinion. For a bushcraft knife, this kind of grind is really preferable. It just cuts through wood like no big deal. Now this isn't a review, this is just an overview. I do plan on field testing this knife, doing some footage of that. I just received this knife from Amazon today, so I wanted to kind of just give you a brief overview of it. It does have, like I said, black and green G10 scales with the red liners. It does have quite a few different cool features that kind of separate this knife from a lot of other knives in the same price range and category, like the SE4. I should have more off the top of my head, just the SE4. Oh, the Becker, like BK16. There's definitely a few advantages to this knife over those knives. It's very well thought out as far as bushcrafting is concerned. One thing they did is they did put a divot here in the scales for a bow drill. They also have this pommel on the end for striking, but then on the other side you have this indent here, and that's used to strike your fire steel. And your sheath, which I'll cover later, comes with a fire steel. You also got a magnesium rod on there, but you got a ferro rod, so you can strike that with the end of your knife. That way you're not, you're not doling up your blade. And this is coated because this is 1095 high carbon steel, which is a good thing to have coated because it can rust. Now, as we know, or as you may know, with a coated blade, it's hard to strike a fire steel. It's sometimes nearly impossible, even with high carbon steel if it's coated like this. So that's nice that they gave you this as an option to strike fire. You can keep your knife in the sheath. Use the ferro rod here. I'm not going to do a demonstration and strike that. So really cool idea. So they've thought out. It's a pretty tight fit on that sheath. They've really thought out quite a bit. They made this more than just a knife. Basically, they made it a bushcrafting tool. They made it a survival type tool because you've got a different ways you could start fire there on the knife. As far as they've got some good aggressive jimping up here, which it is pretty aggressive, but on an outdoors, style knife, I want that to just catch the meat of my thumb so I can do some fine carving, some fine shaving, some fine work. I do like that the handle is a bit long. So if you look, I've got medium-sized hands, and really it's like you've got a pretty big portion of the knife hanging off. But what that's good for, attach yourself a lanyard on there, if you had to do some chopping with this knife, you could do that a lot more easier than if the knife handle was a little bit shorter. I think that was designed that way on purpose. I don't think they just designed it for guys with huge hands. I think they designed it for that use as well. So that's something to consider. It's got a pretty thick blade. I think it's 3/16. It's definitely more than an 1/8, but it's not. What is that, a 1/4 inch? I'll have to check the specs. I think it's at least a 1/4 inch thick, so it's a pretty thick blade stock. A lot thicker than your typical. Well, let's compare it to. Let's see how it compares to the BK9, since we've got that handy. Yeah, so it's probably a hair. Well, that's pretty close in thickness. Just eyeballing it. Like I said, I'll put the specs and we'll do more in the review, but pretty close in thickness to a BK9, which is a big heavy chopper. So it's a pretty substantial fixed blade. A lot thicker than like a Mora Companion or Mora Bushcraft. It's going to have a thicker blade stock, so it's going to be able to handle more abuse, more batoning, more chopping if necessary. Now this isn't the type of knife, this isn't a chopper. It's also really not a batoner. It's a bushcraft knife, but the nice thing is it can do all those things and do them well. And I'll demonstrate that in my review, but it's, you know, very capable of being a jack of all trades style knife. So it's, you know, if it's one knife you had on you, you could survive, you could get by with this knife. If you didn't have a you didn't have a hatchet or a chopper with you, you could still, you know, make this do. It's got a really nice lanyard hole, a nice brass insert there for your lanyard, so that's a really nice touch there. And I don't typically do lanyards except on fixed blades. I definitely have to have a fixed blade or a lanyard on a fixed blade. It's just a necessity for me. So the G10 is really nice. It's smooth. It's not aggressive, but it's grippy. Like, you don't feel like your hand is gonna move off this knife. You have a nice firm grip on it. So just an exceptional fixed blade. Like I said, one I've been looking for or wanting for a long time. Finally decided to sell one of my folders and to get this knife. Now let's talk a little bit about the sheath. The sheath is Kydex. It's got a fire steel attachment, which is a great added plus. It even comes with a fire steel, which is even better. It comes with this also, which I'm not going to leave on the sheath just because it's, you first look at this, you think, oh, it's just an advertising for Tops with their phone number, but it's actually an emergency whistle. And I didn't blow very hard, but so that's pretty cool. They give you an emergency whistle with it too. So not only are you getting the knife, you're getting a fire starter, fire rod. You're getting an emergency whistle, and you get a really nice Kydex sheath that has this belt clip that is adjustable. You can turn it if you want to carry it horizontal. If you want to carry it at a slight cant, you can do that. Really well thought out sheath, great design, got drainage holes. I mean, this is something that a lot of knife companies. One of my biggest complaints with fixed blades is typically the sheaths they come with. Even the Becker, like the BK9, you see my video on that probably. I had to do a lot of modification to even make it decent. It's still a pretty cheap sheath. I mean, that's one thing to think about. You get a Kydex sheath, so you get a nice sheath with this knife, and you get a fire starter and an emergency whistle. I mean, you have a really well thought out package here. The sheath works great. It's got great retention. Comes out good. It's definitely not going anywhere when it's in there. It's not rattling, so it's pretty quiet if you're walking around and such. So they also just came out with a new sheath, a leather sheath that they have that fits this knife, and it fits a bunch of different other knives. That's like a dingler if that's your style, and it's leather. So, and it also has a fire steel attachment. So that's an additional thing you could buy. I think the Kydex is going to work just fine for me. I actually prefer Kydex. So that's just a quick overview of the Tops BOB with the black-green G10 handles, red liners. This is going to be put to some serious abuse, serious work, and we'll follow up with a review here later. Thanks for watching.